I was so excited to get my shipment from Last Bottle Wines in the mail the other day, full of incredible red wines, all from Napa Valley. I love wine tasting, so having this to my door couldn't be happier. Also, couldn't be more excited that today's episode is brought to you by Last Bottle Wines. If you don't know already, they're a Napa-based online wine shop with a twist. They offer just one handpicked wine per day until it sells out, and they're always at incredible prices. We're talking 30 to 70% off retail. And the best part is that there's no subscriptions, no fees, and no minimum purchase. And I could not be more excited to bring this offer right now because they're having a marathon sale, which is coming up March 28th and 29th. Even better, we're offering DATEABLE listeners 10% off your first order with code DATEABLE. So if you are a wine lover like me, this is a great time to join. And did I mention that shipping is 100% free? So what are you waiting for? Mark your calendar for March 28th and 29th, or get on it earlier if you want. You can sign up at lastbottlewines.com and use code DATEABLE and find out why Last Bottle is the most fun way to discover and buy amazing wine. We are so thrilled to be partnering with Hinge. Hinge is the dating app designed to be deleted. As you all know, I'm a huge Hinge advocate as I met my partner of almost 3 years on the app. Even before meeting him, Hinge was always my go-to app because I met more relationship-minded people here and had some great dates. Clearly, I haven't been on the app for a little while, but I re-downloaded it to check out some of the new features. One that stood out to me was the voice prompt, my best friend's take on why you should date me, where your friend can hype you up. Not only does this make the profile creation less daunting, but it's not always easy to see your own green flags. So to test it out, I asked Yue some fun prompts to get her take on what I could put if I was dating again. So the first one, how long have we known each other? What was your first impression of me and how has that changed?
Julie and I have known each other for almost 10 years. My first impression of Julie was that she's very social, but I've learned that she has a lot more depth to her beyond the social butterfly that she is.
My next prompt, what do you think are my green flags?
I would say she's deeply loyal. She believes in love, curious mindset, and she is fearlessly ambitious.
And then last but not least, what kind of friend am I?
Julie is the kind of friend who will always have your back, no matter what.
Damn, that feels nice to hear. So download Hinge and try voice prompts today. Then find someone worth deleting the app for.
The Dateable podcast features real stories from real people of how they make modern dating work or not. Each episode will not only offer you a new perspective on dating, but will also change the way you date. I'm your host, Yue, former dating coach turned dating sociologist. You'll also hear commentary from my producer, Julie Krafchick, and other surprise co-hosts. Hey everyone, welcome to another episode of Dateable, a show all about modern dating. So we had one of our most controversial episodes ever on the season. It was episode 3 called PSA to Women. It featured a man named Leon, and he wanted to tell all women how some men like him thought about women and dating and how to get women to sleep with him. So he had very good intentions of coming on the show and spreading this PSA. But we received so many emails and Instagram comments and whispers in our ears as we're walking down the street saying, I now want to be a lesbian after listening to that show.
The tactics were definitely a little rough, I would say. I don't know what the right word is, but...
You know what's so funny? So we have Allie here. I'm going to introduce her in a second, but... we had a few people comment and say, why did you and Julie not have a bigger reaction to what Leon was saying? Honestly, I think I was in shock for a lot of what he was saying, because I think after Leon left the show, we had this very honest discussion, Julie and I was like, I actually don't think men think like this.
No.
I think that's a very small cohort of men who do, and I think of him as a very New York kind of guy.
Yeah.
And you're trying to date women in different boroughs. But I don't actually think men in San Francisco think like that.
Absolutely not. I think I was talking to a friend and her husband, and we started listening to the episode. He was like, I have never thought this calculated about anything in my life. And
yeah, it's so calculated.
Yeah. So I think, I don't want to say that no men think this way. I definitely think there's a subset out there. Yeah. And I think it's probably more of the ones that women would kind of call the players or the fuck boys or that type. but there's also some good guys out there. So I want women to know that exists.
And I also want to just say that it's so great that someone like Allie wrote in and wants to pretty much like give her feedback about this episode and tell her side of the story. Because that's what Dateable is about. We're trying to create this platform for everyone to share their opinions, whether it be Leon or not. It's just great to hear everyone's perspective. So that is a great way to introduce Allie. She is 31 years old, originally from San Diego. Apparently the dating scene in San Diego is getting crazy. we've been getting emails about it. Apparently, okay. I don't know. We need someone from San Diego.
Well, I haven't lived there since I was 18, so you know,
yeah, I'm sure the dating scene when you're 18 was a little different then. She has been in San Francisco for 5 years, currently pretty single, but taking a dating sabbatical. Welcome to the club. There's been quite a few guests who are taking a dating sabbatical.
After the new year, it's just kind of like that reset or something.
Do you know what we should do? This is a great business. We just create like a dating rehab center for everyone who's like on a dating sabbatical, and then they could all meet each other.
Yeah.
I thought of like a breakup support group that just meets once a day somewhere, and like anyone could just drop in if they're going through a breakup and talk.
Oh yeah. That would be great, except wouldn't you just be like, misery loves company?
Yeah, but your friends are sick of hearing about it.
That's true.
I feel
my gosh. That's true.
If you're in that state, you want to talk about it. So
that is a great idea. So true. So I want to read a little bit from the email that Allie sent to us, and then we can go straight into what her experience has been like. So she said, I can't tell you how often I turn to you guys after a breakup and feel like I wasn't so alone after all. But I found myself feeling really sad listening to your recent PSA episode. While there are players out there, and I have encountered too many in my time, that episode made me feel so hopeless. I used to be a girl who dated guys like Leon, up until a year ago, really. I've done so much work to unlearn some habits that lead me to these men, one being the belief that this is just how guys are. I spent so much time trying to shape myself into someone they'd like. So up until a year ago, you were that girl falling for these fuckboys, believing the words they were saying. Obviously did not listen to the man funnel episode.
No, I did listen to that.
But up until a year ago.
Maybe it didn't come out a year ago.
It didn't come out a year ago, and now you're enlightened and you've been saved. But tell us about your dating life up until a year ago. What was that like?
Yeah, great question. So I really liked guys who are very verbal and open with their emotions. I'm a really open person. So I really connect to people when they tell me how they feel about things, and like their childhood and their pain. And a lot of these men I would date were really open. They were really communicative and kind seeming. And so we would connect really quickly. And once that foundation was laid, I would really trust them. So when they did things that would hurt me, you know, I would just remember all the connection we had and think, well, I must be crazy. They really like me. How could they not? You know, they told me last night they've never told anyone this story about their mom, and I'm the only one they told.
So you used to date Leon. Yeah, you're his ex-girlfriend.
I used to date men like Leon, which is why the episode was really hard for me to hear. And what made me so frustrated was that he was like, oh, women need to be smarter. You know, you need to know your standards. And I wasn't even able to know my standards because I was being like manipulated. So the second I felt something was off, the guy would like assure me I was just thinking the wrong thing, or I was being over emotional or too anxious. And then I would think about that and like, oh yeah, maybe they're right. So I wasn't even able to gain that strength in recognizing.
So what was an example of like a way you felt manipulated?
So I was dating someone and he would come over like really late at night. He was always like, oh, I'm so busy working. I'm finishing this video. I'm X, Y, and Z. And then he would get to my house at 11 and I had been, you know, waiting for a couple hours, and then we would hook up. And then afterwards he would hold me and tell me he loves me, but in Spanish. And it was never...
Wait, was he Spanish?
He's Mexican.
Okay. Wow, that's some game. He's
Spanish.
just like...
And yeah, he would, say these really intimate things to me. And then I would say, well, I was kind of bummed that I was waiting for you and for this long, and you didn't show up, and we barely have like any time together. And he was like, well, you're just so anxious, Allie. Like, stop being so anxious. Like, I was working. I really care about you. Like, and then, yeah, he would, hold me really tight, and we'd have this like intimate night cuddling. And I would be like, oh yeah, I guess he's right. I am just being anxious. And then when it would happen again, I would try not to say something again because I would think it was me, an issue with me. So I was constantly trying to change myself to like fit into this mold of this woman who wouldn't get upset with him or who wouldn't have any issues in the relationship. So, listening to Leon, I was just thinking, well, hey, what about you taking responsibility for manipulating women? I mean, I think we're smart. It's just when you're manipulated, that's a whole different game that you have to go through and learn in order to even know it's happening.
Isn't that just kind of where we are in the political climate today as well? I mean, I think for years we tell women to bring pepper spray and to bring, put your keys in between your knuckles when you're out and about. But why haven't we taught men not to hurt women?
Right. Yeah.
And it's the same thing as what you're bringing up is like for years we've told women to be defensive and to protect yourself when it comes to love. But why haven't we taught men not to hurt women's feelings?
Right.
And that's kind of like the turning point of where we're at, where we've talked to someone at the Good Men Project, where they're working on reshaping masculinity and how to take responsibility instead of putting the onus on women. Now, I also say women have taken on too much responsibility in the last decade or so. We're like, oh, that's a problem. Oh, I can fix that.
Yep. Well, yeah.
Oh, that guy is a problem. I can adapt myself to cope with it.
Right.
And we're also trying to balance the social construct where we have to be cool with everything. Like, no, I don't want to pressure you. We don't need to DTR. It's all good. I'm just going to be like this cool girlfriend. You can come in and out of my life. I'm just cool and chill. Yeah. So it is like very conflicting where we are right now. It's very relevant why we're talking about this.
Yeah, I agree with all that.
So were there any other examples? Not even from this guy, but other guys too?
Yeah, there's so many. Let's see. I dated this one guy who was an investment banker living in New York, and he would fly out to San Francisco and take me on these lavish dates. I remember we went to this speakeasy. You have to use a password. I don't know.
Oh, like Bourbon and Branch.
Yes, that one. And I mean, I'm like a tomboy who would prefer playing soccer than going out to, I was so nervous. I didn't know what was happening. And he bought me all these fancy drinks. And then he was staying at the Fairmont. And we hooked up. It was like this really intimate night. And we carried on a relationship for talking back and forth for a few months. And he came back again and he was just acting a little distant. And it really was really hurtful. And I asked him like, hey, what's going on? And he's like, I just can't get attached because I know we can't really be together. And yet, we were doing all these really intimate things together.
Coupley things.
Yeah, like we would hold hands every time we walked down the street, talk on the phone for 3 to 4 hours every night. So then when he said, I just can't get attached, then I was like, oh, I guess I shouldn't expect that. Oh, I guess there's something wrong with my expectations there. Let me, like you're saying, let me adapt so that I can make him feel comfortable in this situation. And it turns out he was sleeping with a ton of other women.
Right. Of course.
Which I found out.
I think that's the tough part with all of this. And I kind of brought this up on Leon's too, because it's like on one side, when he first told that story, I'm like, I could see it because he's in New York, you're here. Like, I could see that. But then when you're like, is it a line or is it just like their feelings do change? Because I think people's feelings can change.
Yeah.
But how do you decipher when it's like them just pulling game on you? Yeah. Which Leon basically openly admitted that all that was lines. And sounds like if this guy was sleeping with the whole city of San Francisco, then maybe he was also doing lines. Like,
but also he's not lying either. He's saying, I can't commit to you. I enjoy spending time with you, But for some reason, when we're fed a line like that, even if it's the truth, we think there is a glimmer of hope to change this person because their actions speak otherwise.
Yeah, right. And it's really confusing. It was so confusing to me at the time. Now I would know how to navigate that, but he would say like, I really do love and care about you, but I just can't be with you. So, but I wish she had said my feelings have changed, because that would have been more direct to me. That would have been more direct.
But also that may not be the case for him.
Yeah.
His feelings didn't change. He enjoyed spending time with you along with 20 other women.
Yeah, right.
And so there is like kind of a gray area here, right? So I think, again, we are in the driver's seat. We have to drive the conversation. So it's not so much about adapting to them, but also communicating what you are looking for. So why do you think you were attracting men like this?
Well, I think that I grew up thinking this is how guys are. I grew up thinking guys don't want to commit. They're terrified of marriage. They just want to bone girls and move on. I don't know exactly why. Maybe it's the movies we grew up with, the
totally
90s.
He's just not that into you.
Yeah,
that
thing.
Come on.
Oh, God.
It's like
don't get me started on that.
I think that's like a lot of people's perception because of pop culture, for sure.
Yeah.
I actually have some guy friends who've told me, I feel strange for wanting to be in a relationship because I feel like I shouldn't want that.
Right.
I've had guys tell me that.
Yeah. And to be honest, I still have a hard time believing guys want that still. I'm working towards believing that, but it's still really hard for me.
Well, Julie and I can tell you that we get emails and communication from men all the time who listen to Dateable and say they just can't find someone who will commit to them, or they have a hard time dating, but they're looking for marriage. They're looking for something more substantial, but they just have a hard time. It's like those guys somehow cannot match up with girls who are also looking for the same thing.
Yeah.
It's very interesting.
They definitely exist out there.
And I think that because there's so much opportunity for hookup culture that it's really easy to just default to that.
Yep.
And I have a really hard time because I don't like having casual hooking up. So I don't like doing that. I really like emotional intimacy. So technically I'm taking a dating sabbatical, but it's not by choice.
Right.
I mean,
so how did you know that some of these people were like the more of the player type?
Yeah.
Like how did you get to that realization?
This guy, this is a crazy story, but whatever. I talk about it in comedy, so I'll tell you.
Yes, please.
He, a month later, I got chlamydia. And I was like, oh my God. At first I was like, this is kind of cool because I don't sleep with a lot of guys, so.
Wait, is this a different guy?
No, it's the same guy.
Okay.
And I was like, oh wow, like finally, I'm like out there. But a month later, I woke up and I couldn't move my entire body. Like every joint was swollen. I couldn't like bend my hands or my knees. And I went to the doctor and they told me that in 1% of people, chlamydia.
What?
Yeah, this is like a real thing. It triggers this like severe arthritis autoimmune.
Oh my God.
What the fuck?
Yeah, it's
From chlamydia?
And I've actually known like one or two people who've been like, that's kind of happened to me too.
Oh my
like
God.
not to the severe degree that I had it. Like I had to go on disability for a while.
Oh my God.
Even move. And when
Shit.
You're
a walking PSA right now.
I know. I am a walking condom PSA. And when I talked to him about it, he said, oh, I was negative. So I don't know what. He's like, this just didn't come from me. And he was like I said, I don't really hook up with people.
Yeah.
So he was the only person I had been with.
So he wouldn't admit it.
He wouldn't admit it.
Or at least even explore it.
No, he wouldn't at all. And so that's how I knew he was sleeping with other people, but also that, he wasn't probably being truthful with me. And the crazy thing was, at the time, I was like, well, there must be some weird fluke in the test. Like, I was again, like, blaming myself. Like, I remember asking a bunch of doctors, like, are you sure it's not another bacteria? Are you positive? And they were like, I remember this woman at the STD clinic was like, or like, she was taking my blood at UCSF, and she was like, honey, I see this all the time. He's lying to you.
Oh my God.
I was like, that's when I think
that's how you identify a fuckboy?
Yeah, no, I hope that's not.
Hopefully there's easier ways that don't involve going to get an STD test.
Julie, have you ever dated a player or encountered one or fallen for one, I guess?
That in hindsight. I think the part that rung a little true to Leon's for me was there was this guy that I dated that was always too busy. Like, he was always working. He was always like, you know, like the last minute cancellations and like not really trying to make good on it either. Cause it's like, it's hard because I get people do work, shit happens. So it's like, what's the line of them being like playing you versus not? I don't know. He might have been seeing a shitload of women. I have no idea. I think really what it came down to though was that he was breadcrumbing me. Like he was keeping me around. So what his other stuff was going on, I have no idea. But I do know that like it comes back to like what you're going to stand for, right? Like I was like 25, 26 at the time. So it's like now I think a lot of our relationship was like, this sounds like embarrassing saying, was through email. Like, because we never saw each other because he was always so busy. But for some reason in my head, I justified that it made sense, even though he literally worked and lived around the corner from me. So I'm like, what? Like, you could have easily gone and got like a coffee or anything, right?
I mean, we always say this, though. People always use that as an excuse. Yeah. I'm busy. Work is so busy, especially in San Francisco. Oh, my God, I work going to start. I'm so busy. You took a shit this morning. In the time that you were able to take a shit or afternoon, whatever your schedule is, you were able to send out a text message.
You could have texted me while you were shitting.
Because you were probably swiping through Tinder while you're shitting. You could have done something a lot more productive.
But then I almost feel like it goes a step beyond that too, because this guy was he was like sending emails. I mean, actually, this was like so dated. Emails. This was like before texting was even as big. But anyways, like he was like virtually communicating, but he wasn't making the effort like physically,
right?
Like in person. Could have easily made time to meet up, but the reality was he didn't want to, right? No. Did you ever have an instance that you can think of?
I feel like I'm the opposite. I feel like I have a heart of steel because of this one incident that happened to me in college where I was dating someone and he made out with someone in front of me. And I went up and I slapped him and he said, "What? You're not my girlfriend." And the next week he told me that he loved me. So ever since that incident in college, I've just been like, if I see early symptoms of playerhood, I will say no. I will put a kibosh on it.
Yep.
But I think on the flip side is it's also harder for me to fall for someone because I'm constantly suspicious.
Well, that's the challenge is like with Leon's episode too, right? Like there are a lot of good guys that do have to go on work trips.
Yeah.
Right? So it's like,
no, I feel so
like,
bad for those guys.
But then it's also unfortunate that as women, we have to actually think about like, is this person actually going on a work trip or are they at their house texting me saying that they're in like New York and they're actually in their apartment in San Francisco?
It all comes down to the fact that we don't want to be the fool, right? We don't make a fool out of me.
Right.
I'm a grown-ass woman. Don't try to pull this over on me.
Yeah, and I think kind of what you were saying, Yue, about you put the kibosh on them early on is what I have learned to do. So I wouldn't say I can necessarily detect or I even definitely determine whether someone's a player or not, but I'm at a point now where if I don't feel happy or good in whatever relationship, I actually talk to them about it.
That's
and
good.
Make sure it's addressed and resolved. And whichever way we move, we move. But it took me a lot of work, a lot of therapy actually to even be able to do that.
Totally. And I think that actually like was what I took away from Leon's episode too, is like, I think I don't want to go in not trusting someone. Like I do want to like lead with trust. And then obviously if you keep seeing signs over and over again, then you have to reevaluate that. Right. But I'd like to give people the benefit of the doubt starting off. But I think at the end of the day is like the message that I took back, regardless if it's a guy with great intentions and they're not trying to play you, is like, if you're not fulfilled and you're expressing that and you're still not being fulfilled, then that is up to the woman to walk away.
Yeah. And I mean, I would add to that, I think it's really important we actually have a conversation with the person we're seeing about it, because I think that so easily people are like, whatever, I'm just going to date a bunch of other people. No big deal. Like, I'll get back to him whenever. Like, people try to avoid the confrontation and then no one's holding anyone accountable for their actions. No one understands the impact of their actions and they just keep doing this.
And I will say what I just said. I actually don't think this is just for women. I think it's for men too. And that's like to your point, Allie, is like, if people aren't communicating and then like women are just like, well, he's not texting me back fast enough or whatever, I'm just going to go find someone else and like play the game. Then it's just like a circle.
Exactly.
Because now the guy is like, what's going on? Right?
Yeah. So after hearing Leon's episode, I'm guessing you had a little PTSD from it, right?
Yeah, I definitely.
I've been with a guy like this. I've fallen for a guy like this. But you're at a much better place now. So let's talk about that journey. Like, what was that breaking point to get you to where you are today?
Yeah, so I guess the breaking point when I realized I needed to get professional help and therapy was I was dating someone who is a comedian, and he decided he wanted to break up with me. But he had a comedy show before he was going to come break up with me. And he got on stage in front of,
oh my gosh,
all our friends. Yeah. And he announced that he was going to break up with me.
Oh my God.
This is worse than the chlamydia story.
I don't know what's worse.
This is traumatizing.
Oh my God, that's horrible.
So you were part of his material.
Yeah. And I actually was not present at the show. I was home.
Oh my God, you weren't even there?
I wasn't even there, but a lot of people I knew, because I'm a comedian, so I'm in the community. So a lot of people I knew were there for months. Oh my God. I was humiliated. You know, I would go out and people would be like, Allie, are you okay? And I'm like, oh my God, like, I don't want to be talking about my breakup with you.
Right.
And it was kind of like the talk of the scene for a while. And when he came to break up with me, he said, you know, Allie, I did this. He told me. And I was like, what? Oh my God. And
so you found out from him.
Yeah. And he said, well, you know, you of all people should understand that comedy is therapy.
Holy shit.
And then I think that's when I was like, I think I need
fuck you, you motherfucker.
Yeah. I think that it goes back to the being a fool. I think that's like really like, and I was thinking about this with Leon's episode too, is like, I don't want to be thinking that like, everything's going well, and then they're like running this game.
Exactly.
It's like all lies.
Yeah,
right?
it was a lot. I was so taken aback. I had no idea this was coming. I was like, what? Like, and then, yeah, have it put on the public stage. So, but I do this thing. I think this is kind of like a personal challenge of mine is I blame myself for almost everything. So I'm sitting there being like, why did I pick him? What is wrong with me? And I think that there was an issue with the people I was picking. But you know, also he was shitty. So it was like both. But so I actually started, I saw a therapist and he said, why don't you try group therapy? Which is, I don't know if you guys are too familiar with it, but it's basically me and 6 other men and women who are also working on their relationship issues with intimacy and friendships and parents, whatever it is. And we meet for an hour and a half every Wednesday with a therapist and interact with each other and talk about our interactions. And through doing that is really how I've learned how to be confident in how I feel, because in that setting, I'm able to get mad and I'm able to express myself. And I see that these people take what I'm saying into account and they don't ditch me or leave me. They're still there the next week. Yeah.
Why did he recommend group therapy as opposed to one-on-one?
Well, he runs a group, so I think he's really passionate about that approach. Apparently, group therapy is really recommended for relationship issues, and that's almost all I've ever really had. And I have some friends who are therapists who all swear by group therapy, so I was already interested in it. So I also brought it up with him because I just felt so frustrated that this guy who dumped me on stage was after the chlamydia guy. So it was like, how many...
you know what it is? That's what it is, though. It's the cycle of like so many, because I think it's like one bad experience you can write off. But then when it keeps happening, even if they're not like huge things, like I know I've been there before too, like you brought up what happened to you, and as you were telling yours, I just thought of like 5 others that I like think I've blocked out of my mind. But it's like every little thing builds on each other, and then when someone great comes around that there's this misunderstanding or they are being genuine, your mind is jumping to worst case scenario because you know what in the past what's happened.
I mean, honestly, if my mind, first of all, I have yet to meet that person, but if my mind were to jump to worst case scenario, that for me, that would actually be like a healthy thing for me, because I'm so used to believing and trusting everything a guy says.
So you're like, okay, I recognize in myself that now I'm taking a step back and I am actually trying to really see if this person is being legit.
Yeah, that would actually be a good thing for me, which I think
that makes me feel better.
Yeah, I mean, I admire that ability in people who can do that.
That's true, because I guess like when you just like are taking it, you're not even thinking about
that's
it.
That's exactly what I did. And even while I was in the group therapy initially for the first 9 months, I was still with a player. Like, it took me a long time to even get out of that relationship with him. This was a different man. And I remember one day I just cracked and I was like, I can't do this anymore. Don't talk to me. And he still manipulated me after that, because he blocked me. I remember he blocked me on Instagram and unfriended me on Facebook, but then would like my posts on LinkedIn.
Oh my God. LinkedIn.
And then I was wait, so does he mad at me? Is he not? So it's like, I still was like wrapped up in this. Like,
I feel like there's a couple levels that we're talking about. And I think, because there's like this like feeling, and that was kind of like my email example, right? It's like, I just want to like kind of like get at you at whatever small way I can.
Yeah.
And then there's like the player that's like, you think that you're exclusive or you think you're in a good place and they're sleeping with like 20 other people. Like, what are some of the other experiences that either one of you have had?
Let's take a quick break and talk about what you're putting on and into your body. That is why I am stoked to finally discover Lola, a female-founded company offering a line of organic cotton tampons, pads, and liners. And now they offer sex products too. Unlike other major brands, Lola products are 100% natural, and there's no mystery around what's going in and on your body. The Lola personal lubricant features a mess-free one-click pump system with a water-based formula made with aloe vera and completely hypoallergenic. Formulated to help maintain a healthy pH, it's also gynecologist approved. Now let's get to my favorite, condoms. Lola's ultra-thin lubricated condoms are made of natural rubber latex and individually tested for contraception and STI protection. It's premium medical-grade silicone oil lubricant. It's not just professional sounding, but also it's exactly what makes the condom so good. I am all about them, and my partner would definitely agree. For Dateable listeners only, you get 40% off all subscriptions. Just visit mylola.com, that's spelled MYLOLA, and enter the code DATEABLE, spelled DATEABLE, when you subscribe. Now back to the show.
Like, what are some of the other experiences that either one of you have had that you would put in here?
I think you really touched on it. There's layers of not being authentic. There's layers of it.
Yeah.
There's levels. So there's the player, but then there's also the guy who just doesn't know what he feels and doesn't know how to express it, and therefore seems like he's not being genuine with you. And none of those is a good situation, but there are definitely levels.
So does it come down to just being genuine and like trusting in your gut that this is a genuine person?
I think it's just constant check-ins with yourself. This is the thing. Julie was like, oh my God, what is this article you have posted or that you have printed out? So 12 questions that will change your life. That was put out by Thought Catalog. And one of the questions was, I have it taped right there. That's why I'm looking at it. One of the questions is like, what do I have control over? So whether a guy's an asshole, a player, or a nice guy, I have no control over that. That's just who he is, independent of who I am.
Yep.
The only thing I have control over is how I can choose to feel in this moment with him, right? So instead of, I think so much of dating is we're trying so hard trying to like solve this puzzle of the other person, like mind read or trying to figure out what their intentions are and seeing if they fit into our lives and seeing if they like us back. But at the end of the day, we have no fucking control over that at all.
No, we
all
don't.
we have control over is how I feel in this moment. And whether I believe he's a nice guy, a player, or not, I feel at this minute insecure. So if I feel insecure, I need to figure out how I can change that, how I can communicate that.
Communicate. Yeah, exactly.
And that has nothing to do with what kind of person he is.
Yeah.
Right?
Or
it's all very independent, but you just have to do constant check-ins with yourself as opposed to trying to win the other person over. Because all those times you try to win those guys over.
didn't work.
I don't even know if you like these guys. Like when we asked you about these players, you never once said, I really liked him, or I was falling in love with him, or I felt really good around him. It was more like I wanted him to he would say this to me and it made me feel good.
Yeah.
Right? It's very one-sided.
It's interesting because like I asked, like we just said like there's different layers, and you're basically saying it doesn't really matter.
It doesn't really matter.
Well, no, I mean, it takes a lot of courage, I think. It really sounds corny, but it takes so much courage to be able to sit with your feelings of pain or discomfort, especially to say them to someone else.
Mm-hmm.
And I think as far as your girlfriends go, I think that's another thing. Like so many of my friends would try to justify the behavior of these guys.
It's the worst.
Yeah, and I think they're trying to make me feel better.
I know.
But what if they had just said that sounds really hard?
Yeah.
It sounds like you're really hurting.
Yeah.
That's a better way to work with a friend on it. I like that.
Yeah.
But that is what media portrayal is. Look at Sex and the City. Look at all these movies too. It's always girls sitting around gabbing and being each other's echo chamber of like, yeah, he's an asshole. That's terrible. Move on to the next person. Plenty of fish in the sea. But that actually doesn't solve the root of the problem. The root of the problem is, how do I control my life and control my emotions? I think support is another great way of looking at this. We've been defining support in a very different way, and it's not the right way. Group therapy is support, where you're just listening to each other's problems. I went to group therapy for couples counseling, and I found it so useful because I felt like I wasn't alone in what I was going through.
Yeah,
I can totally see the value in that. But it was never other couples being like, oh yeah, you guys should break up, or oh yeah, you're really on the right path. It's not about validating. It's just about listening.
Learning that your voice can be heard, which is something that, I mean, it's crazy as someone who's, does comedy, and I'm a writer, and I didn't really know that.
Because that's all internalized.
Yeah, but I
what
think
you do.
That's a good point, because I just remember this conversation I had with a close friend of mine, and her husband now is like the most genuine, amazing guy, right? Like absolutely incredible. But she said even at the beginning of their relationship, like she questioned things and she had to take a step back and be like, is this my own shit or is it what he's doing? And I think a lot of times, like, yes, there's times when it is someone not treating you well and you need to be able to recognize that. But then there's also times that you need to be like, okay, I've had tons of guys that have done this or like built years of experience and I'm expecting this. And like, how do you like figure out for yourself which of the two that falls into?
Well, I think I might have an example that might help. I don't know if it answers it, but so after I ended things with the last player I was with, the LinkedIn stalker, I was exhausted. Honestly, I couldn't keep doing it. So I was really excited to try like my new skills on dating. So I started doing the apps, and I ended up meeting someone who he was actually an audience member of one of the shows, and we dated a bit. And he was really nice, read a lot of literature, was into biking, like all these things that I really liked too. But he kept putting up barriers to getting close. Like I remember I went over there and we slept together, and then he said, I want to sleep alone tonight.
Ooh.
And I was like, oh, how come? And even me just saying that is a big deal, because old Allie would have been like, okay, no problem.
Pack up your stuff. And
and, I said, how come? And he's like, oh, it's just like really intimate.
Wow.
To wake up next to someone. And I remember that really hurt, and I let it hurt. And I went home, and we had only been dating for a few weeks. So I kind of wanted to see where it was going to go. Like I was like, okay, that's one thing that hurts. Let's see. Because when we were together, we had a lot of fun. So I was like, let's see if it levels out. Maybe I actually knew he had just gotten out of something through mutual friends. So I was like, maybe that's what's going on. So I was still kind of doing that. But it was the first time where I was like really sitting with this discomfort and letting myself feel it. And yeah, he would sometimes not text me back ever. when we would just communicate, but he also said he hated using his phone. So there were like kind of excuses embedded in his behavior that I was trying to understand. And I think if these were done independently, they would have been understandable if they were done in the context of him like taking me out on a lot of dates and spending a lot of time with me. But it was kind of like starting to build. And then we hadn't seen each other for a few weeks, and we had planned a date to like go to a craft fair, and he had planned something for that morning before the date and then for that evening after the date. And that really didn't sit well with me. And, and I texted him, hey, I kind of am bummed that we aren't spending more time together. We haven't seen each other for a while.
Good.
And even me saying that, like, that is a huge thing for me to do.
But that's important. Yeah.
And he wrote back, yeah, I don't want you to feel like I'm fitting you into a schedule. And I thought that was like a really nice response. And I said, yeah, that's how I feel. And then he didn't say anything. And the next day I was like, wow, this really doesn't feel good at all. And I called him and I was like, I'm just curious if you're really interested in dating because of what's been going on. And he's like, you know what? I didn't really think about it until last night when you said something.
Oh.
But I don't think I'm not interested.
You know what, though? I think it's
That's
amazing that you, I think also so much gets lost in text. The fact that you just picked up the phone and called him, like, that's so, like, mature and, like, such a great way to handle it. And
I mean, that was like a really big breakthrough for me.
For sure.
Yeah.
And you were never, like, offensive or argumentative.
Well, I'm not with him. Afterwards, it's like, that guy, he had like a weird neon sign
I mean,
in
like,
his living
you weren't
room.
like, I mean, like, when you talked to him, you were like you were like trying to give him the benefit of the doubt. You were trying to just have an open conversation. I think that's all you can do. And then let people react and show where they're at. Yeah.
This is why when people say, oh my gosh, we've been dating for so and so months or like X amount of years, the amount of time you've been together really it's not a gauge for how strong your relationship is, because something like what you just said, that situation could have dragged on for months, maybe even years.
Totally.
If you didn't confront him, because he probably was, a lot of people are just happy to be, right?
Yeah, that's what,
like,
some of
companionship. I have someone to call up. I can make plans before and after I see her. She doesn't have that many demands.
Right.
Like, this could go on forever. And that could lead you to think you're in a relationship and it's committed. And then that leads to even more of a waterfall of hurt that's about to come down the line. So I love that you were able to do a check-in and say, this is how I feel. How do you feel about this? And only when someone's confronted with that, that's when they can tap into, this is actually something I want.
Right. Which goes back to like the layer or levels of like playerness. Like I wouldn't call him a player.
No.
Right. He was just confused.
Yeah, he was confused.
Or just, he didn't know, he didn't know what he wanted.
Yeah. And I think that's a lot of people in modern dating. And that's where I think like I think he's the exception. I think that a lot of people are not as calculated. I think a lot of it comes off like that because they're just not sure what they're looking for.
Yeah, exactly.
But I guess the takeaway to us is women is it kind of doesn't matter. Like, as long as it's not, if it's not what you're looking for, if it's not making you happy, if it's making you like feel uneasy after even having conversations, then that's when you really need to like evaluate it.
Let's hold that thought for a sec. We'll get right back to it. This episode is sponsored by Via. We all know there are things that can help set the mood in the bedroom, but did you know a little THC could also do that? Yes, Via has developed a unique blend of pleasure-enhancing cannabinoids, libido-strengthening herbs, and a low dose of THC all into one mind-blowing gummy called High Love. This gummy, wow, it will awaken your senses, increase blood flow, and intensify any sexual experience. I've been pleasantly surprised by the High Love gummies because it is just the right amount of THC for me to have a good time without feeling sleepy. And hey, if THC is not your thing, Via also offers a wide array of other gummies without it. And everything legally ships in 50 states with discreet packaging directly to your door. So if you're over 21, you can get 15% off and a free pack of award-winning Dreams THC plus CBN sleep gummies with our exclusive code DATEABLE at viahemp.com. That's VIIAHEMP.com. Let the gummies work their magic. Head to viahemp.com and use the code DATEABLE to receive 15% off and one free sample of their Sleepy Dream gummies. That's viahemp.com and use the code DATEABLE at checkout. Take your passion and pleasure to a whole new level with High Love from Via Hemp. This episode is made possible by Armoire. Armoire makes getting dressed easy. With a clothing rental membership from Armoire, build the perfect wardrobe with brands that are high quality, unique, and recommended just for you. All you have to do is take a 5-minute style quiz and select items from your dynamic, personalized closet. The styles show up at your door in as little as 2 days. Then when you're ready for new clothes, just swap them out. Listen, I live in Southern California. There is absolutely no need for puffer coats or any sort of those winter jackets. But when I travel anywhere else in the world in these cold months, I'm often burdened with the task of getting winter clothes. And now with Armoire, I can just rent my winter wardrobe. It's brilliant. Right now, our listeners can give Armoire a try and get up to 50% off their first month. That's up to $125 off. Just visit armoire.style/dateable. That is armoire.style, spelled ARMOIRE.style/DATEABLE to get up to 50% off your first month and never worry about what to wear again. Try Armoire today. Living with ADHD can be a challenge, and dating with ADHD is definitely a challenge, we've heard many of you say. But finding the right care and proper tools needed to succeed can be life-changing. Done is an online ADHD care platform that can get you all the resources you need to help manage your ADHD. Online visits, refills, and a 24/7 care team made for you. In just 1 minute, Done's online assessment can help kickstart your ADHD treatment journey. With experienced clinicians, worry-fill refills, and online visits, you can start getting personalized care as soon as today or tomorrow. So contact an expert team that can help you around the clock and get a personalized treatment plan just for you. Here's how you do it. Take a free 1-minute assessment and book an appointment with a licensed ADHD clinician as soon as the next day. Get continuous care, one-click refills, insurance coverage, and 24/7 care team support with Done for just $79 a month, and pharmacy copays as low as $0. Visit get.donefirst.com/podcast to learn more. That's get.donefirst.com/podcast to learn more. Done. Turn ADHD into your strength.
Yeah. And I think another, important thing to remember for me was to just be able to accept that I wasn't happy and accept the pain I was feeling. And for my friends to accept it too. Because actually before I called him, I had called my friend and I told her what was happening. And she's like, you know what? Why don't you just talk to him?
Yeah.
It doesn't sound like he's treating you the way you want to be treated.
Yeah.
And that's not typically the advice I would get from most of my friends.
I think that's great advice.
Yeah, no, I thought it was great advice. And yeah, I think we as women need to encourage each other to do more of that.
Right.
And
Not play games or not I hate the just don't text him and wait.
I know.
That is, I remember I had a friend gave me advice that I should just become a little less available. And I'm like, no, because I don't want a guy that doesn't want me to be available. If that's the solution to making this work, then this isn't going to work.
It's not a healthy relationship.
No, we should not be playing those games at all.
That's trying to change yourself in weird ways. That's I got so twisted because I just couldn't change myself enough to keep these guys around that I didn't even know what shape was normal.
Right. You lost yourself in the process.
And I think the reality is it's tough with relationships because it is merging two people together that have different thought processes. So this guy in the example, he may not have even thought anything was wrong. He's oh, I'm seeing her today.
Yeah.
Right? He's not thinking oh, I'm squeezing her in, blah, blah, blah.
Yeah.
So I think having conversations and being it feels like this, how are you coming at it? Then in this case, obviously, it just brought up that he wasn't ready. But in other cases, it could just be actually, we need to meet in the middle here.
Right. Yeah.
It's not what you want. It's not what I want. It's how do we make it work for both of us?
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Because if he was really psyched about being with me, he would have probably said something more like that.
Right. Or maybe he's today I've made these other plans, so I can't do them. But how about next Saturday, all day is us, right? There's so many ways around it.
Yeah.
I do think I'm about to say something that I feel like a flood of emails are going to come in, but I do think there are fundamental differences between men and women.
Agreed.
And I think, I've said in the previous episodes, men think 20% of the day, and women think 150% of the day.
We're thinking about what's happening in 5 months, and they're thinking about what's happening in 5 minutes.
Even if that, right? So I think sometimes we tend to man bash because we are using our own female ways of thinking about things when they just haven't caught up yet to those thoughts. So I think it is important for women to do these check-ins regularly if you are dating a hetero man, because it gets their brain thinking about those things too. Because if you don't, it might never get there. Like a guy could sit idle for a really long time and not have to think about these things. So I think we should be able to take them on this journey of our thoughts too.
Or a good guy may just not even know that this is a problem for you.
I think most guys would not think that was a problem.
No.
If you didn't express it, this is why guys are always like, whoa, this came out of nowhere. Like, I didn't see, and we're like, what? But you saw that I gave you the silent treatment the other day. And they're like, what? I didn't see that at all.
But the problem is we've dealt with men like Leon.
Yeah.
And that's why we get ultra defensive. Like the second when a guy's not like making us like the number one priority, we're like, are we getting played? Yeah. And I think we just don't want to feel like we're getting played at the end of the day.
Yeah. And I would say I'm still in that, probably more on the defensive side at this point, which is why I haven't really found anyone.
But you're getting there. The fact that you recognize it, the fact that you're having those conversations, that's huge.
Yeah.
It's work. You're just doing work right now. It's self-work. And you shouldn't have someone like Leon set you back. I think for someone like Leon to appear on our show should give you should feel happy that you no longer have to deal with a man like this.
Yeah. I just have this fantasy of like telling him off.
What would you say to him right now?
I would
if he was in his room.
There's nothing you need to teach me, Leon. Take responsibility for your actions and apologize for your behavior.
But I think I will, I'm not defending Leon, but I will say one thing that I do agree with what he was saying was that we can only control ourselves. And this is a good segue to takeaways, but I think like we can only control ourselves. So like all the fuckboys, all the players out there, like all the good guys that are just clueless, whatever they may be, like we just need to know what we're looking for and how they can meet us. And if they can't meet us, then we have to move on. Yeah. But we also have to give them a chance to meet us too.
I definitely agree with that.
That's a very good takeaway. And he did say that.
He did.
Not in so many words, but he did say that.
That was a more tactful way of saying it.
More tactful way. Yeah. But he also just wanted women to know that we just have to listen more. Yeah. To listen to all the words that are being said, not just selectively listen to the ones we want to hear. And that's a really
important part. So I guess like that is a segue to takeaways. What are some of your takeaways from this conversation?
I think what Allie has done is give us a playbook of how to navigate around this, right? If you've dated the fuckboys in the past, how do you get past that to now stating your needs and putting yourself first? I think one way to do that is, this is the step we always forget, is to sit with our thoughts. Yep. I think like so many times we're like, oh my gosh, I feel really bad about this. I'm going to go out and, hang out with my friends and get drunk or like go to this party because
get on Tinder
because I want to distract myself and I want to feel good. And then what happens when you get home? You feel even worse because you feel lonelier than ever. I think one, we have to sit with our thoughts because most of the time we don't actually know how we're feeling. Yep. You have to take your own temperature multiple times a day. Otherwise you get lost. Yep. You have no idea what you want. So step number one, accept and sit with your thoughts. Step number two is knowing what you need. Yep. Like, we can listen to other people all we want, but their needs may be very different than our own needs. Mm-hmm. And so how do you communicate those needs? And it's not just in a relationship. So this is what I used to get really annoyed by the people who go to a restaurant and say, I want the salad, but can you take out the shrimp and can you add a little dash of salt?
Like
and can you put
is this like a subtle hint right now?
Can you put the dressing on side and can you make sure the chicken's a little bit warm? Okay. I used to get really annoyed by that. But now I kind of admire people who know exactly what they want and they know how to ask for it. Yep. So I was in an Uber pool the other day and my seat was really pushed really far forward and I couldn't get it to go back. And I was kicking myself because I'm always like coping and enduring. So I just kept thinking, it's okay. I just like have 10 more minutes of this ride. I can deal with it. I wish I would have said something or did something about it. If we can practice these little scenarios of asking for what we want in things that don't really matter, then we're much better at it when asking for things that matter.
That is
right?
a really, really good point of view.
Yeah.
I like
and
that.
I think you can only get to that point if you really sit with your feelings and let yourself feel.
And practice.
And practice.
Keep
Yes,
practicing.
practice.
It's not an overnight thing.
No, I think that's actually my takeaway is like sometimes like I feel like I've done a lot of self-work also and come a long way of not standing for behavior. But sometimes like something will happen and I'll kind of like think about it and I'm like, I feel anxious still. I wish I just wouldn't feel anxious about this.
Yeah.
But I think Allie, you brought up that like the fact that you're aware that you're feeling anxious, like the fact that you're like conscious of it, the fact that you're like articulating how you can deal with it, that is huge progress. And I think sometimes, at least for myself, is I don't give myself enough credit for that progress. Like the fact that you're even aware, like when I was like totally unaware, like I was like blissfully ignorant, but just dumb, right? So at least like you now know how you're feeling, what to do about it, and steps to take. I think my other key takeaway is just, again, like it goes back to understanding yourself and what you're looking for and how much of this is coming from your past versus the person. And like, how do you articulate again in a kind way that's not accusatory or anything like that, but just open that dialogue and then like see where someone is from that dialogue before making acquisitions in your head about things that someone from 10 years ago may have like caused you. Like I guess it's like, it's tough because it's like you want to go in giving someone trust and you don't want to go in bringing your baggage, but you also need to like protect your heart in a way too.
Yeah, and it goes with friendship as well. It's not just romantic relationships. Like I'm always so surprised by how we're able to communicate to our friends versus how we communicate to significant others.
Right.
Why is there such a barrier?
Right.
There's no difference. These are still people that matter to you.
It doesn't matter what kind of relationship. It's important to say something. I think that's hard with friends too, for me.
Yep. And I think
it's not
because we think of confrontation as such a bad thing,
Right.
but I think it doesn't have to be. Like I've recently had conversations and I feel like it brought me closer to someone by having those, like things that I was like potentially scared to bring up, because I think especially as we're navigating new relationships, we're always worried that like things will end if we bring up too much.
Yeah.
But I think the point is if
Right.
we do and it ends, it's not a bad thing. It's like we figured it out earlier. Like you were saying, Yue, like just because things went on for 6 months or 2 years, that doesn't have any like meaning
It's not
at
a barometer
all.
of how great your relationship is.
There's this poet, and he was writing this essay about teaching undergraduates, and he said, I try to tell them, your life matters. You matter. And I think that's something that's really important to remember. Your experiences, your feelings, they are important.
Absolutely.
I love that. And you control your narrative. This is your life. These people shouldn't, affect who you are.
And I think the last thing to pivot off of that is like we've talked about how like past people build into your current experience, but there is a positive side to that too. Like I think like after you brought up like, can you give an experience? Now I have like 10 circling in my mind, but some of those people I'm like, you know what? I don't actually have ill will to you anymore. Like what you did at the time was pretty shitty. I've had people make out with other people in front of me as well.
Oh, really?
Oh
yeah.
my God.
Yep.
Is that like a thing?
I've had that happen twice. I think I blocked it out of my memory. But anyways,
Wow.
yeah, it's happened. I mean, but anyways, I think at this point, it's taught me what I'll never, ever stand for again. Right. And I think the guys that I am with now would never do that because like at a sign of that, like I'm done. Right.
Right.
Seriously. My last takeaway is use a condom, guys. Use a condom. Don't get fucking chlamydia because you won't be paralyzed in your bed.
That's
Holy
a good point.
shit.
It's like
stuff they don't tell you in sex ed when you're in 6th grade.
No, especially from someone that has not given anything, right?
Don't get sexually transmitted arthritis.
Shall we go to question of the day?
Yeah, let's do a quick one.
Quick question of the day. This one comes from Keith. He says, the girl I was dating recently broke up with me because she said I wasn't making her feel like a priority, and that didn't make her feel good. I really liked her, but had other plans with friends and wasn't trying to offend her. She told me things came up for her because of the past guys she dated, stringing her along, and was afraid of getting hurt again. How do I show her I'm not a player, but rather just a guy that does have other people and commitments in his life? We've only been dating for 3 months, if that provides more context too. Ooh, Allie?
Oh, am I answering
that?
You can kick us off.
I think if he's actually said these words to her, But I think that communicating exactly that would be really helpful. And asking her, how can I show you that I'm committed to you? What does that look like?
This should have been a takeaway. I don't know why we didn't think of it, but I think what you said earlier, like about just someone articulating, like them just being like you said about the guy from New York, the one that gave you chlamydia, that him just being like, that's however he's going to be forever now.
That's how you are to me too. Don't worry.
You're like, I have no other identifiers besides that. But like, if he had just been like, hey, my feelings changed, or like the distance is too tough, or I'm looking for someone close, but like something that was just honest, like I think that goes a long way.
And 100% honest.
Yeah. And I think a lot of times men aren't trying to hurt women, but they feel like by not being honest, it will not hurt them as much. But I think I don't want to speak for all women. Personally, I would much rather someone just be honest so I can move forward than like give you that like glimmer of hope or whatever. So I think also, again, like this Keith example, like this comes down to everything we've talked about of just having a conversation.
Absolutely.
Yeah, and he's trying to blame himself. Like, oh, what can I do? What should I do? Like, when she said she actually has these issues with herself, so it's not just his fault, you know? So why not, create a dialogue about what she would really want?
That's a great point, because that's what I learned in couples counseling. Everything you do with your significant other is a negotiation. It's a constant negotiation. We are just trying to mesh two lives together and trying to make that work. So in Keith's scenario, instead of telling people who don't know who your girlfriend is or who this girl is about your situation, I think you should have a conversation with her, obviously state like what you've told us, but also negotiate, like have an action plan. How about I have dedicated time for you twice a week? Would that satisfy your needs?
Right.
And she can come back and say, I would prefer 3 days, or I would prefer like a whole weekend. Then you guys can have some starting point to negotiate back and forth. So both of your needs are met.
Right. And I think like, I know she wasn't the one that wrote in, but I'll give her advice anyways. But I think like,
use a condom.
Yeah, seriously.
In case Keith is playing all of us, looking like a good guy here. I'm just kidding. But like, I think this comes back to like bringing the past in. And I think it's great that she can be vulnerable and recognize it. And again, like, instead of necessarily pulling the cord with Keith, because like, again, I feel like Keith probably thought like, I'm hanging out with her, I'm hanging out with my friends, like what's the problem? So it's like having that conversation opposed to just the first sign of things not working out, Xing it and going and trying to find someone else, because I guarantee this is going to happen again to whoever she finds next. Yeah. And she's just going to have to learn to like voice it and have that discussion with someone, because people have friends, and if they don't have friends, that's another problem.
Yeah. And Keith, instead of trying to show her you're not a player, why don't you think about, do you actually want to be in a relationship? Maybe like you like her company, you like being around her, but maybe you don't actually want to make her priority. And that's okay too.
And then you have to communicate that to her also.
Communicate. And use a condom. So that's all we're going to say today.
And on that note.
And don't date a comedian.
Yes,
they will talk about your breakup on stage.
Oh my God.
It's too good a material. But Allie, thank you so much for, first of all, writing to us about Leon's episode, but also just telling us about your journey. This is not an easy journey to go through, to go from fuck boys, and for some of you guys, I know you've dated fuck girls too, to go from that mindset of like insecurity and constantly trying to mold yourself for someone else, to now standing on your 2 feet and like being really strong in who you are, communicating your needs. That's a really tough process. And it's work on a daily basis. So we really are appreciative of you coming and sharing your story. For our listeners, we love to hear your journey too. And it's not just about, even if you haven't come to where Allie is now, where she is in her journey, maybe you're like midway through, maybe you're in the trenches, maybe you're figuring things out. That's what we want to talk about. Come on our show and let's figure shit out together. You're not in this alone, and that's we're hoping that that really comes across. One, you're not in this alone, and two is we want to provide all these different perspectives so we can crowdsource ways of getting through the trenches of dating. Yeah?
Yep.
Okay, cool. Also, we love to have guests on our show. If you have a good dating story, maybe related to chlamydia.
Or you're the comedian that's pulled that shit before.
Yeah. We love to have you on our show so we can tell you what's up. Okay, we're going to wrap this up. Stay dateable.
Your action item for this week is to work on verbalizing your needs. Start small. Maybe your entree came out slightly wrong. Instead of thinking it's not a big deal, change your mindset to, what is it that I need right now? If what you need is the right entree, ask for it. Maybe you have a friend who's constantly checking his phone while he's talking to you. Instead of letting him be, express your need for him to respect your time. Working on verbalizing your needs on a daily basis will build a great foundation for doing the same in relationships. Want to continue the conversation? First, tag us in any post with hashtag #StayDateable. Then head on over to our website, dateablepodcast.com. There you'll find all the episodes as well as articles, videos, and our coaching services with vetted industry experts. You can also find our premium Why series, where we dissect, analyze, and offer solutions to some of the most common dating conundrums. To connect with us, find Dateable Podcast on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. We're also downloadable on Spotify, iTunes, and other podcast platforms. Your feedback is valuable to us, so don't forget to leave us a review on iTunes. And most importantly, remember to stay dateable.